Hi, I'm Colleen Caro. Welcome to Avant-Grad, Ohio's Trailblazers. I'm here in the 1804 lounge of Ohio University's Baker University Center on the Athens campus. This episode features none other than Ohio's 20th president, President Emeritus Dr. Roderick J McDavis, who's also a 1970 graduate of the College of Education. He was also the first Black president of Ohio University. His insights, experiences, and perspectives on both leadership and higher education are fascinating and inspiring, whether or not you're a Bobcat. I hope you'll enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Hi, Dr. McDavis.
Hi, Colleen. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well. Doing well. Good to talk to you this morning.
Thank you so much. It is such a treat to see you. It's been a little while.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
You were Ohio University's 20th president for about 13 years. Did I do my math right?
Yeah, 13 years.
Okay.
That's right. Yes.
13 years. And I was an employee at the university and had an opportunity to work with you on many projects and many occasions. So it's a real treat for me personally to be talking to you. I really appreciate your time spent with us.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
Well, thanks so much. So this podcast, as you know, is about trailblazing alumni, and you are in that class. First Black president of Ohio University, only the second alumnus to be president, the other being William Henry Scott, who was born in Athens. A little bit of trivia for those out there who might not know that. So I would love to start at the beginning so we can learn a little bit more about you and how you got started on this trail that you blazed through higher education, which here's another math quiz I gave myself. I came to about more than 45 years in higher ed. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Good calculation. Very true. Yeah.
All right. I'm 2 for 2. That's saying something when we talk about me and math. So you grew up in Dayton.
I did.
And so I'm curious, what was it like, your family life growing up in Dayton in the 50s and 60s? A little bit, what were you like as a kid, and what was the climate like in Dayton for you growing up, and what was your family like?
Yeah, there were 5 of us in our family, Colleen. I had 2 brothers. My mother was a teacher. She taught in high school in Dayton, Ohio. My father worked for the Board of Education as well. He worked in the central office, and he dealt with young people that had truancy issues. So he was sort of the administrative type, and my mom was a teacher. So at the dinner table every night, that's what we heard about as young boys growing up. We heard about education. We heard about what was going on in the schools. We heard about what was going on with students. But we middle class. We grew up in a nice neighborhood. We went to Catholic schools, the 3 of us. Elementary, middle, and high schools. And so our background was a very middle-class background, a very positive one. I was a shy, introverted young person, Colleen. You couldn't get 2 words out of me growing up.
That is very interesting.
Yeah. I kind of came out of my shell later, and we'll talk about that because it happened at Ohio University. But I was one of those young people that I played music. I was a drummer. So I was in the band in high school and had a lot of fun with that, the marching band, and we got into the indoor season with the high school orchestra, and I was part of that. And then I ran track in high school. So those were the 2 things that sort of took my time up as a young person growing up.
It's so neat to hear about your parents' backgrounds because, of course, one of my questions naturally is what drew you to education? And hearing about your parents, I feel a little bit like there wasn't much of a choice for you. It was just part of family life and you were surrounded by it.
Yeah, they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And in this instance, it did not. I was enamored with education as a young person, aspired to be a history teacher. That's what I wanted to be when I grew up, and that was sort of my basic foundation with my affection and admiration for education and educators.
I love it. Well, your parents must have been very proud of you and your career.
They were. I tried to follow in their footsteps all the way. I sure did.
Yeah, so wonderful. So tell me how you made your way to Ohio University.
Yeah, there were two parts of that. One part was during the time that I was looking at going to a college, President Alden had started an initiative at Ohio University reaching out to high schools all across Ohio to recruit more students of color. This would be in the mid 60s, so it was right around 1965. And that attracted me to Ohio University, the fact that they were reaching out as a young African-American at the time. I thought, here's a university in Ohio that wants me to come and get an education and is literally inviting and reaching out and saying, hey, please come. And so that was the first part of it. And the second part of it is, as I said, I ran track and wanted to continue running track in college. And Ohio University back then had a great track program. And so I thought, here's a 2-for-1. I can go and get a great education at Ohio University and also run track. So I did not have a scholarship. I was a walk-on, but so much enjoyed the 1 year that I did run track when I came to Ohio University. But those were the two things that attracted me.
That's great. That's great. It's so neat to hear about President Alden. It's wonderful just to hear about President Alden because I know we all loved him so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But how wonderful to think about that program that he started that drew you here. And then you end up becoming a president and, of course, a friend of his. That's just must be really sweet for you.
Oh, Colleen, he and I talked about that. I have such fond memories of the conversations that President Alden and I had when he came down to visit the university when I served as president. And I told him that story. I said he was the reason that I came to Ohio University, because without that program, I might have gone to a different college or university across Ohio. I did want to go to school in Ohio, but the fact, again, that Ohio University was actually reaching out, there were a lot of other people that I knew at that time in Ohio, and specifically in Dayton, that were coming to Ohio University. So I had a lot of friends who were also freshmen when I came to Ohio University in the fall of 1966.
And that was when you were in school here, that led to some tumultuous years.
They were.
So before we talk about that, though, I want to hold you to your word. And you said you'd tell us a little bit about how you came out of your shell at Ohio University. What was it that happened here? Because we talk about, that college experience is right. is so important
right.
for young right. people really figuring out who you are. And Ohio University is such a special place that yeah. we feel like it's a close community, but there are so many wonderful resources for students, world-class resources. But
and I'm a witness to that.
Yeah.
As a freshman, one of the things that was occurring at Ohio University is that there were Black fraternities and sororities that were just being established. And so as a second semester freshman, I became interested in pledging. I'd been recruited a little bit in the fall, but some of my friends and some of the guys on the track team were joining the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, and I decided to join that fraternity. So I started to pledge and went through that whole process. And before the end of my freshman year, little did I realize that there was a leader inside of me that had been hiding for the first 18 years of my life. Because toward the end of my freshman year, they elected me as an officer. Not only did I pledge and became initiated and became a member, but they also wanted me to be an officer. And at first I pushed back. I said, I'm not that guy. I am not I'm not an extrovert.
No way, not me.
Exactly. But they said, no, you're going to do this. And so I did it. And that really was the turning point in my life, Colleen, because that experience helped me to understand that there was another individual inside of me that had been hiding for an awful long time that really came out over the next 3 years. So I stayed in a leadership role for my last 3 years at Ohio University, and that put me in front of crowds, giving speeches, that put me in meetings, that got me to start thinking about what is in the best interest of the fraternity in terms of programs and those kinds of things. So I became much more extroverted. I started to utilize my verbal skills a lot more. Skills that I had, but I just had not utilized. And so I moved from this kind of shy, introverted individual to a much more extroverted, a much more outward individual who utilized all of his talents and all of his skills. And to your point, that continued at Ohio University because I became a tutor. Later, as a Black Studies program was being developed, that was another one of President Alden's initiatives during the time that I was at Ohio University. So I became active in the Black Studies Institute. I started to serve as a mentor, as an advisor for younger African-American students. So all of those leadership skills that I thought I never had, I actually had, and they started to come out during the years that I was at Ohio University. So it certainly helped this young, shy, retiring person to find himself and to get a direction, to move in a direction that I never thought I would, which was to think more about being a leader than to simply be a teacher.
What's really cool about that is all the ways you blossomed and all the other people, the other lives you touched, and just how that grew in so many ways. One of my next question was going to be, so what happened next? What else did you do? But in sharing your experiences as a tutor and your other experiences, it really shows how it was just that seed, that needed to find a way to grow.
Yeah, and then going to the interfraternity council meetings, meeting with the other leaders of the fraternities and the sororities on campus, learning how to be a leader by observing those who were in leadership roles and who were older than me, having a lot of role models, having folks on campus that were older than me who were willing to spend time mentoring me, who were willing to help me learn how to become a better leader. Because again, I started from scratch. I didn't know anything about leadership. I had not been a leader at my high school of any of the organizations. I've not been in student government or any of those kinds of things. So for me, it was kind of learning from scratch what leadership was really all about. And the fraternity really helped me to sort of get my feet wet with learning how to become a leader.
And also coming full circle with some of those initiatives you were involved in, and then as president, some of your accomplishments as president, the Links program,
right.
The Urban and Appalachian Scholars programs, all of which were aimed at diversity. And you have many awards, but especially some significant awards in diversity. So I wonder, what's that like for you looking back, or what were those moments like for you as president, where here you were, leading the charge, working with others to move these initiatives forward. Did you ever reflect on your time as a student and those things that brought you
Colleen,
to the university?
Yeah, I really did. And so here's my story in that regard. The model for me was President Alden. As a student at Ohio University, when President Alden was there were several things that he tried to do. And if you look at the tenure that I had and you look at some of the things that I did, they were very much following the Vern Alden model. So let me just name a few things. One, I spoke about his focus on diversity and inclusion. I tried to do the same thing as president during my time. So I focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of increasing the number of students of color, increasing the number of faculty that were people of color, including some senior administrators that were people of color. So again, right out of Vern Alden's notebook. The second thing that President Alden tried to do was to increase the physical nature of the campus, to make it appear better and to prepare for student growth and enrollment. So South Green, the residence halls that were built on South Green. And, as you know, during the time that I was there, we built 3 or 4 new residence halls. So once again, a page right out of President Alden's presidency. How do you strengthen the university? Well, one of the ways you do that is you build up the residence halls. The other thing that happened during President Alden's tenure was that the Convocation Center was built. President Alden felt like athletics, intercollegiate athletics could be a window to the university. And so he spent time trying to build up Ohio University athletics during the time that he was president. I did the same thing. So my emphasis on our football program, on our basketball program, on all of intercollegiate athletics, and that focus was again a page right out of his presidency. So I studied what President Alden did as president and tried to do many of the same kinds of things during my time. Focus on the academic portfolio of the university. We tried to lift up some of our academic programs. Our focus, as you well recall, in the Russ College, we built the Academic and Research Center. That was one of the first initiatives that I took on because I wanted to focus on strengthening academics and research, and selected the Russ College and the college at that time of osteopathic medicine, which later became the Heritage College, bringing those two entities together to try to focus on strengthening academics and research. And then taking the Heritage Osteopathic Medical School up to Dublin, up to Cleveland, spreading that across the state, strengthening our medical school, and many other things that I tried to do across the academic portfolio of the university to strengthen it. Getting 3 named colleges during the time that I was there, from the Scripps College to the Patton College to the Heritage College. So education, communication, medicine, to join the Russ College. So when I left, we had 4 named colleges, and then having a $500 million capital campaign.
Yeah, that was another thing that stands out so much to me. Yeah,
absolutely. And most of that money being for an endowment to strengthen academics. So again, these were all the kinds of things that I thought, President Alden tried to do when he was president, and I tried to follow that same model. I didn't talk about that a lot when I was the president, but he was my role model, not only as a student back in the 60s, but as a president. And when he would come to Ohio University to visit, he and I would just sit down and have long conversations about what my next initiative would be. And he tried to explain to me what he did in terms of the sequencing of initiatives that he took on. And while one of his pet projects was, working with the federal government on the Peace Corps, to the point you made earlier, I tried to focus at Ohio University on urban and Appalachian scholars because I felt like students in Appalachia had been forgotten. So we tried to reach out to them, to bring them into the university. I felt like students of color across the state of Ohio needed more of an opportunity to get a college education. So we reached out to them to try to bring more of those students to Ohio University through the Urban Scholars Program. So again, everybody has a role model. Everybody has, someone that they try to emulate. And President Alden was that for me.
It's really neat to hear about. It's almost like you were continuing some of his strategic pathways for the university.
Trying to tie the 60s with the early 2000s, my time period was 2004 to 2017. So yes, trying to say what worked back in the 60s. Let me see if we can make that work. We didn't get it all done. You never do when you're in a leadership role, and especially as a president. But if you can hopefully leave the university a little bit better than you found it, then that's what you try to do. And that's what I tried to do during my time as the 20th president, was to leave Ohio University just a little bit better than it was before I arrived.
So let's talk about those early years a little bit. You mentioned the 60s, and of course you were a student in the late 60s. You're the class of 1970, College of Education graduate.
Yes.
And we know that Ohio University closed in 1970, shortly after the Kent State shootings.
Yes.
And so I wonder if you can talk to us a little bit about that, and what that was like. I know you've told the story many times.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, I think, to think about that time period, especially today. Yeah. It's been a very tumultuous couple of years, maybe more than that, but a tumultuous time period, especially when we think about human relations and race relations. And, we think about college students and what they're experiencing as they're coming of age and dealing with all of these issues in the country and the world. And so I feel like there are maybe some parallels to the chaos and tumult of the time that you were in college, particularly 1970. So I wonder if you could give us a little history and perspective on your experience.
Yeah, that's a great question, Colleen, and a great parallel, because the late 70s, we had the Vietnam War, we had the Civil Rights Movement, we had the women's movement. There was a lot going on. And when the students were shot at Kent State, in May of 1970. I'll never forget, I was student teaching that particular semester. And I remember a few days after that there were some protests that occurred at Ohio University. And there was a feeling, I think by some, that maybe we might have the same kind of situation occur at Ohio University. And so the National Guard was asked to come down to Athens. And I still remember those National Guardsmen who were stationed around the campus, especially around the College Green, with bayonets affixed on their guns, and the feeling was so tense as I would come back to campus after a day of student teaching, and would walk around the campus and just have have that feeling. I was concerned that something terrible was going to happen at Ohio University. And I didn't understand it at the time, but when President Soule closed the university and told us all we had to go home within 48 hours, as a senior, of course, I knew that meant missing graduation. So for those seniors and graduate students who have not had a chance to participate in a commencement during this last year or so at Ohio University, I'm right there with them. I understand how that feels, having gone through it. And it was a long time, for me to kind of feel okay with that. I mean, I was really depressed. I was frustrated. I was upset about it. But years later, when I served as president, I understood that President Soule probably saved a lot of lives by making that decision. But in the moment, it didn't feel so good. You had put in 4 hard years. You were looking forward to that commencement. You wanted your family and friends to be there with you. You wanted to celebrate with your classmates. And all that was taken away from the class of 70, which is why so many years later, in 2010, we brought that class back together at a commencement and lifted them up. Had them seated right in front and just lifted them up, and they felt real good about that. And I had a chance to get in line with them and walk across. It was just a great feeling. So what was happening in the 70s, while it might be different circumstances here in 2020 and 2021 with the pandemic, certainly there's a link between students not being able to complete their education with a commencement the way they wanted to. The same thing happened back in 1970. We were the first class, in fact, that didn't have a commencement at that point in the history of Ohio University. So those two things are forever tied together in the history of Ohio University. But, we were able to transcend a lot of that, Colleen. And I think all of us were better people as a result of having gone through a lot of those experiences. I remember, when I was president, students used to say to me, you don't know what it's like. You've never been in a protest. And I want to tell them, I could write the book on protests because I was part of the students who were out there protesting when I was there. So I think oftentimes students think, well, we're the first ones, to be protesters. We're the first ones to have grievances. Not true. It's happened a lot in higher education, and it's going to continue to happen. So I was part of that environment in the late 60s, right up to 1970 at Ohio University, lamented the fact that I could not have a commencement. But over time, those wounds healed. And what I would say to students today is over time, the university will bring you back. You have a chance to have that commencement. You'll have a chance to get closure, and those wounds will eventually heal.
Absolutely. And we are doing that. We are planning that for the class of 2020 and lots more celebrations for like you said, to lift up our other students.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning them and for making that connection, because I think it's important for them to know that they are being thought of and they are being supported.
Absolutely.
The pandemic has been, of course, as you and I understand, it's very personal, right? Yeah. Some of those of us who are professionals, we love being able to work from home. For some of us, it's a struggle. Childcare is an issue. For students, some of them feel very isolated. Some of them are doing okay with it. So it's just a very personal thing. And for them to know that they are on our minds and they are being thought of is
absolutely. And Colleen, the thing that I would say to, again, our students today, this is a pandemic. It's worldwide. It's not only affecting students in Athens, but it's affecting students all over the world. And that's a significant difference than what I experienced in the late 60s and 1970, where it was sort of Ohio-centric. I mean, a lot of the colleges and universities in Ohio didn't have a commencement that year. But this time around, it's a lot of colleges and universities all over the world that have not been able to have a commencement, that the students have not been able to get closure. And it is a difficult feeling to have when you've invested that much time in your college education. But again, the university, as you pointed out, is going to bring those students back. It's going to bring their families back. They're going to have a chance to be honored. They're going to have a chance to celebrate, and those wounds will heal.
It's quite a time for higher education, isn't it?
It is. And that's, one of the things that I reflect upon a lot, because I'm still kind of involved with higher education today. Yeah. But when you're in a leadership role, it's day to day, it's 24/7, it's 365. You don't really have a chance to sort of step back and reflect. and the challenges of today are different than the challenges that I faced, but challenges nonetheless. I mean, every president, every institution has challenges. It just depends on the moment, on the time. But you never get away from that when you're in a leadership role.
So you have an interesting perspective from where you sit. You're still involved with higher education as managing principal with your search firm.
Yes.
You have helped place many folks in executive positions, presidents, provosts, and so on and so forth at many institutions. What's it like, you know, being in the seat you're in, still in a leadership role, still involved in higher ed, but very, very different.
Yeah, and Colleen, I'm enjoying this role because
but you are.
Yeah, well, to your point earlier, I mean, when you invest over 40 years in an enterprise, it's part of your being, it's part of who you are. And what I enjoy so much about what I'm able to do today is to help sort of find that next generation of leaders. There are a group of leaders in higher education who are serving as presidents and chancellors who are stepping down, you know, after serving long years as faculty members, as deans, as provosts, as presidents, as chancellors. And now it's time for that next generation of leaders to step up. And that's the joy that I have now of finding those people and helping institutions to be able to bring them in and see them start their journey, you know, as a new president or as a new chancellor. So for me, it's having the opportunity to travel around the country, to work with community colleges, to work with colleges and four-year colleges and universities, at public, private, and again, small, large, but to really work with boards of trustees and boards of regents to try to help them find their new leader, their new president, their new chancellor, meeting these people, becoming a mentor to some of them, trying to do for them what people did for me as someone who had people I could talk to. Hopefully I'll become that for many of them. And then also helping institutions to find provosts and vice presidents and deans that will be that, again, that next generation of leaders who will follow the presidents and chancellors that are out there. So I'm having fun with it, enjoying it. It's a lot of work, but it's good work. It's fun work.
And it certainly sounds like you haven't slowed down that much.
No, you know, I thought I could never be as busy as I was when I was president, but I'm finding in this role, this is 24/7, 365. The biggest difference is it's a singular focus. I mean, we wake up every day and we're thinking about, you know, how can we help this university or this college find a new leader for this area or for that area? You know, at a university, you have a wide variety of things that you have to be concerned about, from, you know, the students and the academic programs, to the facilities, to the staff, to the intercollegiate athletics, to the other extracurricular activities that are all part of student affairs. So you have a multiple a variety of things you have to think about when you're a president or a chancellor, you know, versus what I can do now with this kind of a singular focus.
Yeah.
Let me just say one other thing about that, if I may.
Please, yeah, I'd love it.
Close it together. The one piece of advice that President Alden gave me very early in my tenure, he said, Rod, never forget, every part of Ohio University is part of what you have to be concerned about every day. He said, you don't lift any one area above another because, and he used a great analogy. You know, he said, all of our intercollegiate athletic teams have Ohio across their jerseys. And he said, it's the same way with every other part of Ohio University. He said, so don't pick one area over the other. You have to fall in love with every part of Ohio University. And I never forgot that, Colleen. That was the best advice anybody ever gave me, because that, for me, helped to frame the fact that I fell in love with every part of Ohio University. I didn't put any part above another. All of Ohio University was important to me.
That's a daunting, right? It's a little overwhelming.
Very much so.
Never rest, never forget any particular part of campus.
Exactly. But at the heart of it, Colleen, would be students. I mean, for me, the lasting memories are the students that we served for those 13 years, many of whom I still am in contact with. It gives me just a great deal of pleasure to be taking a trip somewhere and to be on an airplane or to be at an airport and somebody walks up to me and says, are you President McDavis? And I'll say, yes. And I'll say, I was a student there in 2007 or in 2010, or, you know, and we'll start talking about what was going on when they were there. That lifts me up. And the students that I still keep in contact with, who are now married and have families and are young professionals and are doing all kinds of exciting things out there, to be able to connect with them on a continuous basis just lifts me up and makes me feel good and makes me feel like it was worthwhile. So the student part of the experience would clearly be one of the highlights for me, that every year, we were bringing in roughly, 3,000 or 4,000 students. And at the end of that year, we were graduating 3,000 or 4,000 students, knowing that we had made a significant difference in their lives.
I was going to ask you if there's anything that you might miss, what you might miss the most. I have a feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that daily contact with students. I enjoyed it. It was the reason. It's the reason the university exists, was to improve the lives of the students who passed through the university. And so for me, I always remember Deborah and I talk a lot about move in. We were always out there helping a small number of freshmen move in, seeing them say their goodbyes to their parents, and for Deborah and me saying to their parents, "Hey, we're going to watch over your son. We're going to watch over your daughter." That was kind of the beginning of it. And then right there at commencement, which was my happiest day of the year, being able to say goodbye, to students who hopefully we help to improve their lives and to wish them well, and to, share some pleasant memories of their 4 or 5 years at Ohio University. So we had those bookends. We had the beginning of the journey where we were able to reach out and connect with students early on, and the convocation that we had, and that walk up Richland Avenue, and, with the marching 110 in front of us. I mean, that was one of my highlights, and certainly the day of graduation was the other highlight. So those two bookends for me in any given academic year were certainly highlights.
You can see me as you're telling these stories and reliving these memories. I just have this huge grin on my face, because it's really, for those of us who have participated in those things or seen photos, and you see just the energy and the joy on the students' faces, and it's the really powerful moments.
And it lasts. The beauty of it, Colleen, is it lasts a lifetime. Those are things that I think about every day. For these past 4 years since I've been away from the university, I still reflect back, and Deborah and I on different occasions we'll talk about different events that occurred when a particular date comes. Like in January when the MLK holiday was there. We remember the meeting at the church and at Garbuth Memorial Chapel, and going on the walk and going through the program at Baker Center. I mean, those are really, really special moments that you never forget. And so we relive those. And that's a way for us to stay connected, to stay in touch with what's happening at the university. And so those are things that are very, very pleasant memories for us. And certainly, the Capitol campaign, I mean, remembering all the great things that we did with you and the Russ College and with all the other colleges across campus, in terms of all the money we were able to raise, over $500 million and those kinds of things. I mean, those are things that stick with you for a lifetime, because that the university is better, because of those things that you were able to do.
Absolutely.
And again, as we talked about earlier, I mean, seeing the Heritage College now, seeing the campus in Dublin, seeing the partnership that we developed with the Cleveland Clinic, knowing that, part of our medical school is in Cleveland today. All of those things just make a significant difference. And knowing that the docs that graduate from Dublin, the docs that graduate from the program in Cleveland, and knowing that they're going to practice in those areas. And really with this pandemic today, understanding that they probably saved hundreds of thousands of lives. That's what it's all about. Those are the memories that you carry with you the rest of your life, when you're able to say, have I made a difference in the lives of the students that were on campus? And quite frankly, have I made a difference in the lives of the people of Ohio? And knowing that many of the students who graduated clearly are making a significant difference in the lives of the people of the state of Ohio. It could be nothing better. That's what it's all about. That's the legacy. That's what it's all about.
Right. You took the words right out of my mouth. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So let's do some of these Ohio highlights, just
sure.
Some rapid fire questions. So thinking back to your days as a student, did you have a favorite spot on campus as a student?
Yes. It was still Baker Center. Baker Center was a meeting place. The old Baker Center, where Scripps is now, that was sort of our hangout. We would spend a lot of time there. There was a favorite card game called Bid Whist that we used to play a lot. Some folks a little bit too much, quite frankly, but that's where we have a lot of our social events. That's where we would have a lot of parties and dances and those kinds of things. But we just hung out there as well. It's where you can meet your friends and socialize. But Baker Center would be my favorite hangout. Yes.
And then moving to your years as a president, did you have a favorite spot on campus from your years when you were here as a president? I know you spent a lot of time in Cutler Hall.
Yeah. But I'd say it carried over to Baker Center again, the new Baker Center, because there was the place, Colleen, that I could go and eat and hang out with students or faculty or staff. But it was also the place where most of the student events occurred. It was also the place where a lot of alumni events occurred. The place where we had a lot of significant events was in Baker Center. So Baker Center would bookend. It was a place where I hung out as a student. But it was also a place, my favorite place to go as president, because that's where I connected with students and faculty and staff for the most part, and alumni would be Baker Center.
Nice. And what about any faculty who you may have had as a student? Was there a professor who stood out to you, or maybe a course, something that really maybe stuck with you, or was a defining moment?
That's a good question. Colleen, I don't remember their names, but I'd say the faculty that had the most profound effect on me would have been the faculty in the College of Education at that time, because that was my major. My major was social sciences in secondary education. So I took most of my junior and senior years were spent taking courses, in education. And so for me, the faculty that had the greatest influence on my life were those that helped to mold that teacher that was part of me.
Right.
I really got to do more as a faculty member in higher education than as a K-12 teacher, but still the basics of how to teach I learned in now the Patton College of Education.
And just about the community too. Did you have a favorite spot in the community? Maybe a favorite restaurant, a favorite food, a favorite?
Deborah and I ate at a lot of restaurants around Athens. It was kind of a way for us to connect with people in the community. And I don't know that there was any one. We ate at some Asian restaurants. We ate at some, American cuisine. Was very, very good for, certainly going to the OUN and eating at Cutler's restaurant. I mean, so there were a lot of different places around town that we liked. And I don't know that we really focused in on one. We tried to spread out across all of Athens and eat at as many different restaurants as we could, just to connect with, first and foremost, the people that owned the restaurants, but then secondly, to connect with the people that it was their favorite spot. And so when we were in their favorite spot, it made us feel like we were in the community and we were connecting with people all across Athens. So we had a lot of nice spots, and at least 2-3 times a week, we find ourselves out in the community eating at some restaurant, and it was all good. And then even to the point where we used to also, from time to time on a Friday night or a Saturday night, we might drive up to Columbus and go to a restaurant up that way, just to for a night out, just to slip away and slip up to Columbus and have a nice meal up that way. And Lancaster as well. We used to go up to Lancaster and eat at some restaurants there. So eating out was a big part of what we were all about.
When I think of you as president, I have memories of you being in the community and out and about. I know I saw you at WellWorks many times working out.
Yes.
And that was always fun. In doing my research for this interview, I watched some videos and read some websites and so on, but there was a video about one of your awards that Patricia Ackerman was quoted in. She is, of course, former chairwoman of the Ohio University Board of Trustees. And she remarked that after your interview, I think you left the room and someone said, "Now that is a president." And I love that. But by the same token, I've heard some stories about you maybe jumping on stage at events and otherwise being quite lively. So it's really
that was the other part, Colleen. I enjoyed my time as an undergraduate. I'll go back there and talk about the fact that I said I was an introvert who became an extrovert. Well, once I made that conversion, I really enjoyed myself socially. So I don't want to leave that piece out. But you just said something that made me some great fond memories. You talked about WellWorks. I absolutely enjoyed going to WellWorks. I mean, for a couple of reasons. One, I think it helped me to stay healthy, when I was a president. But two, I got to see and talk with folks like yourself when I was there, because faculty, staff, from administrators from all over the campus would come to WellWorks, and I was going there on a daily basis. So it made me feel like I was keeping in contact with folks, and I learned a lot, from the conversations I would have inside and outside of WellWorks about a wide range of issues. So when you ask me, well, so what were some of your favorite places to hang out? I should not leave WellWorks off that list. I enjoyed spending my time at WellWorks. It was a good place.
It definitely was. So final question, just in closing, do you have any parting words of advice for students today, or maybe alumni who are out there, in these chaotic, tumultuous times? It's a big question, I know. And you did share a lot of really inspiring thoughts earlier, but thinking about all the Bobcats out there, particularly the ones who are on campus or maybe at home living with mom and dad, or maybe they're living alone. Any parting words of advice that you would send to them as President Emeritus?
Two thoughts, Colleen. Two thoughts. One, for current Bobcats, for those who are on campus, try to find yourself. Don't be afraid to get into that inner person. There's another part of you that has to be discovered, and it's a good time to take some time to discover who that inner person is. Reach out, connect with as many different people on campus as you can. Don't be afraid to try different things. Don't be afraid to allow yourself to grow and develop and to start becoming that person that you want to be. And for those alumni, the best advice I can give to Bobcats across the world is continue to make a difference. It just thrills me every time I read a story about one of our alums who's accomplishing great things. Whether it be in the arts industry, whether it be in the communications industry, whether it be in the business world, whether it be in the education world. Every time Bobcats make a difference, it's a big deal. So I would encourage all of our alumni, to continue being great Bobcats. Don't forget about your alma mater. Give something back to your alma mater. But most importantly, give something to those around you, contribute something to your community, make a difference in the lives of the people that you're in contact with. And for all of us, I think that, we're forever grateful to our alma mater for all that it has done for us and all that it continues to do for us. So we all, whether we're current Bobcats or alumni, should remain loyal to our alma mater.
Great advice. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for talking with me today. It has been such a treat. And I know that our students and alumni out there are going to really love hearing our conversation. And so glad that you're still out there influencing higher education. We have your track team members and your fraternity brothers to thank for getting you started on your leadership path. And we just really appreciate you sharing your talents with us and your time with us today.
Thanks so much, Colleen, and best wishes to you and everybody else in the Bobcat community.